Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome. I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today is an award-winning travel writer, adventure traveler, and blogger who loves history and curious facts. BC, before Canines, she hurtled, slid, submerged, and threw herself off bits of every continent except Antarctica. With husband Mark, AD, after dogs, she became an adventure caravanner. She has published 6 lighthearted memoirs about her travels since quitting work, and her forthcoming books will chronicle her plan to convert an army truck and drive to Mongolia. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Jacqueline, Jackie Lambert.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Jackie, our opening question on Authors Over 50 is always, what took you so long to write your first book?
Well, that's a great question because I published my first book in 2018 when I was 54 years of age. And for someone who has loved writing and reading for so long, that was a bit of a slow start. I had, maybe in the early noughties, I did sort of have a little brief flirtation, shall we say, with the publishing world. I sent off manuscripts to agents and so on and so forth. And honestly, I could have papered my house with the rejection slips. I didn't have any trouble getting published. I did have a number of articles published. However, getting paid was another matter. So trying to pursue writing as a career was not really an option. It was not turning out to be very lucrative. Obviously, in the last 10 years or so, the publishing world has changed massively with the advent of print on demand and self-publishing. And funnily enough, you catch me today, I'm just about to meet a lady tonight for the first time ever who changed my life completely. She was a follower of my blog, a lady called Nicola, who followed my blog and said, you know, you write beautifully. I love your writing. You know, you should write a book. And I said, oh, you know, I've tried all that kind of business, you know, a long time back. And obviously, you know, queried agents and sent off manuscripts and got nowhere. And it was her that actually sort of said, well, actually my friend Sophie, she publishes books herself, and have you heard of self-publishing? And it was at that point that all of a sudden I realized that this long-held dream of mine, I think it's a dream for any writer to want to publish, although I do really write for pleasure. It's something I can't help. I have to write. But yes, it was Nicola who actually sort of encouraged me to self-publish, and here we are, you know, sort of 5 years later with 6 books published. I've won awards. I've you know, sort of been a bestseller on Amazon in various categories. So it's been a really rather amazing journey.
Well, we are so fortunate to have so many options in publishing today, and self-publishing is certainly one of those avenues for everyone. But you've become quite prolific after you published that first one, so we're happy to hear about that. When did you first discover your love of traveling?
Oh, I think that's been a lifelong passion. I think I'm just a curious person. And I mean, one of the reasons I love reading, and I do particularly read in the memoir genre, is because I want to experience every life. You know, I would love to be a Bedouin. I'd love to be a stunt person. I just, would love to try everything. And I think, travel is, sort of realistic way of satisfying a curious mind. I absolutely adore finding myself in a new city or a new country where the culture is completely different. And it challenges your preconceptions, I think. I mean, we've just come back from Albania. I've traveled in places like Nepal where the lifestyle is so completely different from, it couldn't be more removed from how things are in the West. And I think that's just always sort of fascinated me and given me a great deal of joy. And then I love the outdoors. I absolutely love countryside and different vistas and landscapes. And of course, with travel, you can go and see all kinds of places. I mean, many moons ago, when I went to Nepal, we rafted the Karnali River, which is in the far west of Nepal. I mean, most people would think of Nepal as being the Himalayas, but this was in the far west, in the tropical jungle part of Nepal. And it was so remote, we had to trek for 2 days with Sherpas carrying all our rafts and supplies to get to the river. But if I describe the Karnali River, as it is called, that means the Peacock River. So, I mean, I was just immersed for 6 days on this river trip in the most beautiful peacock-coloured water, surrounded by wonderful green jungle. And I just don't think I feel truly alive when I'm doing things like that, because, just the beauty of nature, the wonder of nature, and then the power as well, if you're doing something like rafting or sports like that, just is really, really exhilarating.
Well, I'm surprised you haven't made it to your last continent, Antarctica.
No, quite. I don't know why I haven't quite made it there yet, but maybe one day. I forget who it was who said, I haven't been everywhere, but it's on my list. So yeah, one day I think maybe I will get there, because I believe that is absolutely fantastic. Again with the, sort of ice flows and the penguins and so forth, it would be a very fascinating and certainly I've read, biographies of adventurers and travelers who've traveled there. So I would love to go.
And how does one begin to drive to Mongolia?
Well, the first thing is you buy a six-wheel truck. Yeah, we decided that we've travelled since 2016 in a caravan towed by a van, which was our toy box. So we carry windsurfing equipment, skiing equipment, paddleboards, a little boat, dog trailers, all kinds of paraphernalia for getting out and about into the countryside. But we figured that maybe the Gobi Desert and all the unmade roads on the way to Mongolia might be a little bit too much of a step for the caravan. So literally during lockdown, we purchased a six-wheel army truck off the internet unseen. And that's where I am now. I'm talking to you from the back of the truck, which we converted ourselves into our new home. So we've got, a lovely big bed and shower and cooking facilities on board. We've got solar panels, so we're completely self-sufficient. We've got 600 litres of water. So yes, that's the starting point for Mongolia. Unfortunately, the problem is that we need to drive through Russia and Ukraine to get there. So at the moment, we've kind of put that on hold. But we're enjoying exploring other parts of Europe just at the moment. And yeah, one day I'm sure we will get to Mongolia, because that is another life that I would love to live, is as a horse archer and Mongolian nomad. So yes, it's a long-held dream to go there and experience the steppes.
Well, your life is certainly an adventure. I want to know how you fit in any time for writing. What is your routine? Are you a morning person or a night person?
I tend to be very much a morning person. Often what I do, I mean, after years and years, I mean, it's such a joy that I don't have to work now. We managed to retire early and we rented out the house, and that pretty well funds our travels. We're pretty frugal, but yeah, I think after many years of getting up at silly o'clock and sort of going into work and a long commute and so forth, then actually I really enjoy kind of lounging in bed. But yeah, I can often sort of fit in, an hour or a couple of hours writing. I make myself a copy, and while the dogs and Mark have a snooze, I often find that's quite a creative time for me, because I am one of these people who wakes up at 4 a.m. with the perfect sentence in my head, and I have to have a notepad by the side of my bed, otherwise I lose all these fabulous ideas. So I do tend to write in the morning, just have a leisurely start, and write in the morning. Although depending on what we're doing, because every day is different with this lifestyle, we never know where we're going to be, or what we're going to be doing. So it is really a case of just fitting it in as and when. But as I say, the most creative time seems to be the morning.
Which book started your series, and then tell us a little bit about the ones that followed?
The first book that I wrote is called Fur Babies in France. Pretty much like we did with the truck. I mean, we did actually see the caravan before we bought it, but it was very much an impulse purchase. We'd never owned a caravan, which I think on your side of the pond you would call it an RV trailer. Yeah, we basically went out one day to have a look, and by the end of the day we'd signed on the dotted line. And in celebration of this wonderful new purchase that we'd just made, we had I think it was more than one bottle of champagne, and we got a little bit tipsy, a little bit giggly, and then said to each other, like, what if we gave up work and lived in this full time? Maybe we wouldn't need to work if we rented out the house. And literally within a month, we'd sold pretty much everything we own, rented out the house, moved into the caravan, and headed to France. So we chose France because we thought it would be probably easier than most countries, because I do speak French, and it wasn't too far, and the French are very well set up for RVing. I mean, most French villages have a campsite, a municipal campsite that belongs to the community. So it was a gentle introduction, or as gentle an introduction as you can get into caravanning when you've never done it before. But obviously we had a lot of mishaps and steep learning curves as we sort of got our heads around actually this brand new lifestyle. So the book is about that, really, and just how we sort of dealt with the problems that raised their heads, and so forth. As I say, it is adventure caravanning, because I think certainly in Britain it's viewed as something that is maybe a kind of staid pastime, but we do have a tendency to want to go to more unusual places. And certainly the subsequent books, once we cut our teeth in France, we headed out through Germany into the Czech Republic and Slovenia, into sort of fairly different countries. And then the third year we went to Romania, which was just amazing. I mean, it was quite entertaining when we told people that was where we were going, because lots of people said, oh my goodness, you're going to get chased by wild dogs, you're going to get eaten by bears, the gypsies will kidnap you, you'll get scammed and robbed and everything. And then obviously there are the vampires, of course, you've got to watch out for those, and the werewolves. But when we actually got to Romania, it just couldn't have been more different. It was like a wonderfully friendly country with warm people, and far from what you expect after watching all the Dracula films. I mean, the landscapes and the countryside and the history is amazing. It's a country that has 22 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And I think lots of people don't know that, there are a lot of preconceptions that hover around travel. So it was actually really wonderful to see that. And then the following two books have been rather rather a strange experience, because clearly we've undergone the global pandemic, and as travellers with our houses rented out, that did pose somewhat of a problem. We actually were in northern Italy when the pandemic struck, which, if you remember, was Europe's #1 hotspot. So we actually got locked down in a mountain village in Italy. So the 2 following books, I've written one called To Hell in a Hound Cart, which was our post-pandemic travels, and then the previous one was It Never Rains But It Pours, which was very much how things went. It's certainly what it felt like, because we had to leave Britain because we had the whole Brexit thing going on, and with travelling with dogs, we never knew at any point whether that was going to become a problem. When the Prime Minister said we're leaving on the 31st of August, no ifs or buts, and whether we've got a deal in place with the European Union, then obviously we were sort of thinking, well, if that happens, the dogs won't be able to travel. So we had to kind of rush to escape Britain. And then the next thing we knew, a global pandemic struck. So it really did feel like, it never rains, but it pours. So yes, that's 5 of the books. And then the 6th book is not really part of the series. That's called Pups on Piste. One of the things we love doing, and the reason we were in Italy and we got locked down in northern Italy, was because we love to ski. So it was a chronicle of our first season that we spent in Monte Rosa, which is like a wonderful little known ski resort, and it sort of nestles beneath the 2nd highest peak in Western Europe. Not many people have heard of Monte Rosa, but it is the 2nd highest peak next to Mont Blanc. So yeah, we usually sort of spend the season there. So that's a chronicle about that. So
Wow. So many people are listening to you are going to be so envious of all this travel that you're doing, and being able to write about it is really fascinating.
we are very lucky. I mean, I do consider ourselves very lucky to be able to live this lifestyle, although it has come about because of brave decisions, really. We lived our lives. It was something that both Mark and I always wanted to do, was to travel. We never thought it was feasible, and we haven't won the lottery. We haven't had a windfall or anything like that, but we just decided it was what we wanted to do, and we saved for many, many years. We were probably planning it for about 10 years before we finally gave up work. And it was a case of, we didn't subscribe to the materialistic lifestyle. So, instead of buying a bigger house, we bought a smaller house, which cost less to run, was less costly, and we put the money away. With cars, we didn't have great big fuel guzzling cars that cost a lot in tax. We downsized with everything. And then I think we are just fortunate that neither of us are particularly materialistic. I've always found that really sort of experiences rather than material things. I mean, I would much rather go and ride a motorbike than have a designer handbag. And maybe unusual in that my brother did once say I'm not a proper woman. He would never take advice on his girlfriends from me because he felt that I wasn't a proper woman. But I feel that we're very fortunate that we've never subscribed to always having to have bigger and better. So we were able to put money away. And then, of course, when we decided to give up work, we did actually have something behind us to do that. So it is feasible, but there are compromises and decisions to make in order to do that.
Well, I think you're very brave. I've always considered living in another country, but never made the leap to do that. And you're making it sound like it is feasible for everyone to be able to save and to do that later in life if they'd like. I love the idea about experiences instead of material possessions, because I do that with my grandchildren. I always give them experiences for holidays, for their birthdays, or for Christmas, so that we can experience things together, and not just a toy or something that goes out of season very quickly.
That is so wonderful. What a lovely thing to do, Julia, because, that is the thing. I mean, I've found, the reason I'm writing about our current travels, but I have so many ideas, for other things to write about, because luckily, since I was about aged 30, I've always sought experience. And those are things that never leave you, like the toy, as you say, the toy of the season is not something that will stay with you for life. But and hopefully, I think, for your grandchildren, then that will set them up in life, that they too will become curious about experiences. If you try many things, you learn what you like and what you want to do, rather than going through life just following and not really knowing what's available. I
Yeah.
think that's absolutely wonderful.
Well, maybe that'll be one of your travel books, because so many families and children and teenagers, are traveling, and so many of us will take our grandchildren on senior trips after they graduate from high school and want to take them on these adventures. So maybe you could share what would be appropriate for those children or teenagers, and give ideas to parents.
Well, maybe I'm not a parent myself, other than being a puppy parent, but something I have observed from friends of ours who are into sports or into travel like we do is that they have really lovely bonds with their children, because they share something in common. Far from mum and dad being, like the boring old fogies, mum and dad are out there windsurfing, or mum and dad are down in Spain in their motorhome, and, the kids can come and visit. I mean, that is something that is a consideration with our lifestyle. I mean, some people do sort of say, oh, I wouldn't like to be away from the grandkids, or I wouldn't like to be away from family. But what I would say is that, in many ways, it can bring you closer. I
Yeah.
mean, if there is a catastrophe, I mean, I'm never more than a couple of hours flight from Britain. So, I mean, I can always get back if, it's probably quicker than driving up from the south coast where I live to the north where my family is. It's probably quicker to fly back from Albania, in truth. But then also you can enjoy really lovely times with your family or friends if they come out and visit you. And certainly when we've been out skiing, if we've been in Italy for 6 months skiing, then lots of friends have come and joined us. And you could certainly do that. And people we've met who have similar lifestyles to us, they can either accommodate people in their vans, or kids can come and join them in a lovely city for a couple of weeks and stay in a hotel or a bed and breakfast. It's something I'm always fond of saying, is that there's always a solution. And, far from being a problem, far from being away from friends and family, it is possible to incorporate that into the lifestyle. And it is very rewarding as well.
I agree. I think those are great options. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about the passage that you've brought to share today, and then read from it so we can hear your tone and voice in the book?
Yes, I've decided to read the prologue from the fourth memoir in my Adventure Caravanning with Dogs series. I mean, each book they obviously are chronological in time, following our journey from when we gave up work to, well, where we are now. And each one is a standalone, but as I say, they follow on as a series. And I'm going to read the prologue just to give you a feel of sort of my writing style, and also the sometimes the troubles that face us. One thing that I do try to do with my writing is to be honest about it. I mean, there are many books out there about travel where it's all sunshine and rainbows and sunsets. I mean, it's a wonderful lifestyle, don't get me wrong, but the lifestyle itself does sometimes present problems. And then, of course, there are things that are beyond your control, such as Brexit had a massive impact. This is Britain leaving the European Union, had a massive impact on our lifestyle. And then, to find ourselves in Italy when all of a sudden the borders all closed and we couldn't go home, and so on and so forth, because of a global pandemic that was just way beyond your control, is the sort of thing that you can face with this lifestyle. So I hope that this short passage will just give you an idea of my writing style and some of the things that we face. So I start the chapter with a Chinese proverb: may you live in interesting times. All of our lives are played out against a backdrop of world events, yet the minuscule threads of our existence seldom coincide with that gargantuan backdrop. Millions of scenarios gig along simultaneously, like performances in adjacent theatres, each insulated from the other by soundproof walls. We glimpse them only if we open the door. Occasionally, great happenings hove into view like a sperm whale coming up for air before diving back into the depths of its own deep sea reality. Mostly, we don't notice. Sometimes a few droplets from the splash might land upon us. They may register briefly in our consciousness, but once the sun dries them off and the ripples dissipate, the ocean's surface becomes calm again and order is restored. My husband Mark and I have tried our best to shield ourselves from the stresses and strains of modern life. We gave up work to travel and integrate more of what we love into our lives. We simplified and decluttered, selling most of our belongings, then fulfilled a long-held dream to share our lives with 4 dogs, Cavapoos Kai, Rosie, Ruby and Lani. Our strategy generally keeps us away from the dramas that unfold in neighbouring theatres and avoids the whale, or at least provides a sou'wester and oilskins to resist the worst of its deluges. But occasionally, just occasionally, something strange happens. It's as if the backdrop, the benign scenery in the theatre of our lives, suddenly leaps forward and swallows us whole. The whale breaches and unleashes a tidal wave which engulfs us and from which there is no escape. May you live in interesting times is a Chinese curse, not a blessing, and we were about to discover why.
That's lovely. Your descriptions are just lovely.
Oh, thank you.
What about publicity from the road? Have you found anything that you can do that markets your books, something that worked or maybe that didn't work?
I've found, I'm very fortunate that my background is actually in sales and marketing, albeit of scientific equipment. I'm a biochemist and I used to work for many years in sales. So I do have some knowledge of that field. But it is very, very difficult. Clearly, I've never marketed books before, although some of the skills are transferable. I have to say that in 25 years as a salesperson, I don't think I ever sold anybody a thing. I always found that it was more about, kind of building relationships. And sometimes actually I was the most terrible salesperson in the world. And I'd say to people, don't buy from me. It's the wrong product. I don't want someone looking at something with my name on it or my company's name on it and thinking, I wish I'd never bought that. So I must admit, I'm not someone who subscribes to the hard sell. So what I've tended to find is that doing things like this, sort of engaging with people through podcasts or interviews or engaging with people on social media. For example, I'm a member of the Facebook group We Love Memoirs. Being very much a memoir writer, it gives me an opportunity to sort of engage with both memoir writers and readers. And I've found that just that kind of organic sort of exposure has really worked the best for me, because it's not hard sell, which I wouldn't want to do. Even though I am a salesperson, I still do get a little bit icky about selling myself. I think everybody does. But what I always subscribed to really as a salesperson was that I have a good product. I'm proud of my product, and it's helping people really. If people want to be entertained or uplifted or get travel inspiration, then what I'm providing is a good thing for them. So it's not like you're trying to take money off them for something that isn't good value. So I've just tried to get over that sort of icky feeling of self-promotion and just get on with that. But yes, as I say, I think that the best thing is just to engage with people. It's a slow process, but I have found over the 5 years that I've been doing that it has built. Obviously I have my blog, which is actually how the books originally came about. It was, as I say, Nicola who read my blog and said, oh, you should write a book, because she enjoyed my writing. So the blog obviously helps. And then I do guest posts. I mean, obviously, many people want to know how it was we gave up work, how we travel with 4 dogs. So I do blog both factually. So again, that's content that's very helpful to people about travel and dogs, or the regulations now that Britain is no longer in the European Union. We're limited, like you would be if you visited, for how long we can stay and so forth. So, you know, I find that that's a lot more helpful. I have tried running Facebook adverts. I found that absolutely not helpful at all. I got very little engagement. I mean, that might just be like my inability to produce ads, but it's just relentless. I read somewhere the other day that each person is subjected to 4,500 adverts per day. That's on social media, on the internet, billboards, on the side of lorries, in shops. I mean, it's just such an awful lot of noise. It's very hard to get yourself seen through that noise. And I think being very genuine and offering something that's helpful, rather than just saying, buy this, buy this, buy this, is going to be a lot more worthwhile for people. In the end, you know, and I think that's what it's all about. It's sort of offering value, isn't it? And good value.
Speaking of the internet, so many people worry about traveling and having decent internet access. I have internet problems on my ranch in Texas. So you must have figured out a way to receive internet as you travel.
We have indeed. To be honest, we just buy a SIM card in whichever country we're visiting, and then put that in our phone, and use the phone as a data hotspot. And I can tell you now that in Albania, wherever we were, we had 4G internet. Romania is extremely proud of her 4G internet. We were up a mountain in Montenegro and had internet. But in Germany and in the United Kingdom, I've had to like go somewhere else today to get internet in order for us to do this podcast. It's really weird to me that in, you know, industrial powerhouses of Europe, that the internet is so woefully bad. But yeah, we actually have had very few problems with internet. We have bought an internet booster, but we've never had to use it. So yeah, we just find using the phone and using that as an internet hotspot has worked a treat. And we very rarely had like no internet. Just as we came back from Italy, we went from Italy into France, and our Italian SIM card stopped working. And as we crossed France, we didn't really want to buy another one because we were only there for a day. So it felt like going around the dark side of the moon when the Apollo mission went around the dark side of the moon and lost contact with Houston. But other than that, literally, we've had internet the whole time.
Well, that's really great. Jackie, as always, our last interview question is, our writers over 50 are quite unique. Do you have advice for writers 50 and above?
Yes, I do. I think we are very unique because at this stage, I mean, in many ways, I know it took me a long time, even though I've always been passionate about writing. It took me a long time to publish a book, but I'm glad really that I waited for this long, because I have so much more experience to bring to bear on the process. As far as advice, I mean, it's easier now, as I mentioned right at the top of the interview, with self-publishing and print on demand. It's easier now than it ever has been to write and get published. All I would say though is, don't forget your craft. I mean, there is, some people are much more natural, as they are in many fields. Some people are much more natural than others. However, I wouldn't wake up tomorrow and think, do you know what, today I think I'm going to be a brain surgeon. So I would say, you know, do read widely, read excellent books in your genre. Do do creative writing courses, and learn grammar. Please learn grammar. There's nothing I find more off-putting than like poor grammar or poor spelling in published books that I read. And it isn't just self-published authors that are guilty of that. I've found some howlers in books by some very well-known writers. So do just learn your craft. But yeah, I mean, go for it. And I mean, I would say just do remember that a finished book always sells better than an unfinished one. So many people that I meet say, oh, I'd love to write a book. I've written a bit of a book, or I'm thinking about doing it. You need to have some discipline. And writing a book isn't something you can do in half an hour. You can't just run it off. I mean, it takes a long time and it takes commitment. But yeah, by all means, if it's something you've always wanted to do, there really has never been a better time in history, I don't think.
That's certainly great advice for us today. And I just appreciate you so much being with us from across the pond. And we are inspired by your journeys today. You've made us all want to get a caravan and go out and do some more traveling. So we just appreciate you. And we are happy to say that you're now counted among our authors over 50.
Oh, I'm so proud. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to chat with you today, Julia.
Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday, when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend. And check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's DAILY, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing. And remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.